Hello, this is Adam Bernard with AutoPerspectives, and it is time for a somewhat supersized episode of our weekly news roundup. Now, if you heard last week, you might recall that I said I was going to carry over the Rivian and the Lucid news to this week because we had so much to talk about last week. Well, there have been some additional things unveiled, so we have quite a bit to review today, and we will dive right into it with Rivian and the R2 finally getting real. Believe it or not, it's been 2 years since Rivian unveiled the first prototype R2. Some would argue maybe that's a little early, given, again, 2 years away from start of production. But now we've got the rest of the information on specs, performance, pricing, and everything like that. It'll launch with standard, premium, and performance models, with prices initially ranging from $49,000 to $58,000. But it should be pointed out, they're actually going to launch the most expensive vehicle first, and then every few months launch a less expensive variant. That's not unlike what we see in the internal combustion side of the business either. And there is still a $45,000 vehicle. That's what was promised 2 years ago. That vehicle is not due later until 2027. And that's the one vehicle that we didn't really get too many specs on. So we don't know what the range and performance of that variant will be. It's worth noting that the 656 horsepower from the dual motor configuration, which is what we get with the initial launch variant here, blows the Mercedes GLC EQ out of the water, although we haven't seen the AMG variant yet, and even beats the BMW iX3 M60's estimated 620 to 630 horsepower, as well as Tesla's 627 horsepower. It is just a little shy of Volvo's EX60, which peaks at 670. Now that leaves room for the as yet unmentioned tri-motor variant that we heard about 2 years ago, and that could appear as the new RAD variant. And that's the Rivian Adventure Department. So that is kind of their M division. At least that's how it seems to be positioned so far. Now, although the press release doesn't mention it, the R2 does charge from 10 to 80% in about 30 minutes, reportedly at about 240 kilowatts. That's not bad, but with BMW, Mercedes, and Volvo all launching vehicles with 800-volt architectures and charging times at under 20 minutes, it puts them at a bit of a disadvantage. This is a little more off-road capable than its competitors from the luxury brands. It's got a 9.6-inch ground clearance and approach and departure angles of 25 and 26 degrees. Which is better than just about anything out there that I've been able to find. The closest competitor appears to be the recently unveiled Jeep Recon. That's got up to 9.4 inches of ground clearance, but the approach and departure angles are not quite as good at 33.8 and 33.1 degrees. The interior, like the exterior, is largely unchanged, but now we know that the up-level models feature real birchwood trim with either black crater or coastal cloud color schemes. In other words, unfortunately, you are limited to pretty much black and gray for the moment as far as the interior colors. We are going to get our hands on eventually the Rivian Autonomy Plus. No one has gotten a chance to check that out yet, but it sounds pretty impressive. It is supposed to have hands-free capability, and they're offering for a lifetime price of $2,500, and it'll be free on the launch version. There'll be a monthly fee if you do want to go that route. It uses HDR cameras and radar. Apparently not LiDAR initially, although it sounds like there will be a LiDAR unit launching near the end of the year, and that'll be a roof-mounted device. And remember that Volkswagen Group thought well enough of Rivian software capability to partner with them, and the R2 looks ready to demonstrate some pretty sophisticated new technology, including their own in-house developed Rivian personal digital assistant. So overall, it looks like Rivian seems to have delivered on what they promised 2 years ago. Still a few things we haven't seen yet. The official entry-level model, and of course the tri-motor, but it looks like they're off to a good start. They're looking to build and sell around 20,000 of these per year coming out of their existing Illinois plant. So fingers crossed. And meanwhile, crosstown rival Lucid is also going to be entering their kind of high volume phase with their next wave. They had their investor day this week. And even though Rivian decided to show their vehicle 2 years before launch, Lucid's next EV, which goes into production at the end of next year, still hasn't officially been revealed yet. Now you're looking at an artist's impression here, which was shown in Moto Trend. But we did get a significant download last week at Lucid's Investor Day, which provides us with at least some more technical details and a few hints as to what the new vehicles will look like. It's actually going to be 3 EVs. So whereas Rivian has the R2 and maybe potentially an R3, Lucid will launch first with the Cosmos, Those journalists who were lucky enough to see an actual prototype said it looks like a smaller, sleeker, and fresher approach to the Gravity, which is Lucid's current SUV. It's very cab forward with a rather sleek, fastback profile with a two-row configuration. The key target metrics include a best-in-class spaciousness and efficiency, up to 4.5 miles per kilowatt hour, 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds, and starting under $50,000. Although again, like Lucid, I would expect, like Rivian, I would expect Lucid to launch with the kind of launch edition first, and then work their way down to that sub $50,000 model. They are claiming a 50% reduction in labor and overhead costs per unit versus the Air and the Gravity, which is why they still hope to make money at this price point. They're also claiming a $1,000 lower annual insurance costs versus their competitors. They are not doing mega casting or giga casting like we've seen in Tesla and others. They call it a modular mixed metal design, which they feel is mass and cost efficient and also easier to repair. Now, unlike Rivian, Lucid is claiming a very aggressive charge rate, 200 miles in 14 minutes. That's only a little slower than the Gravity, which suggests an 800 volt or 900 volt electrical architecture. So that'll make it a little more competitive in terms of charging. Driving the Cosmos and its siblings is the new Atlas motor. Lucid claims that now Lucid already had a really good electric motor in the Gravity and the Air. The Atlas has 30% fewer parts. It's got a 37% lower bill of materials cost and 23% less mass than the current Zeus motor, with a best-in-class power ratio of 4.9 horsepower per kilogram. The new battery has 80% fewer parts and 45% lower non-cell battery costs. It has V2H, V2L, V2X, and V2V capabilities. So you can plug all sorts of things into it, from an air conditioner to a TV to your house to another EV. They say the Cosmos will hit 300 miles with a $500 battery cost advantage over Tesla. That 300 miles is with a 69 kilowatt hour battery. That's not the final battery size, the final range numbers, but they offer that particular metric to demonstrate the overall efficiency of the vehicle. The interior, which we got a glimpse of here, involves the current Gravity setup. That is a 36-inch wide, high-mounted display that sits above the steering wheel. It's not unlike the Lincoln Nautilus. It's not like the BMW panoramic iDrive because it's not all the way at the base of the windscreen. You'll notice it does not appear to have a center touchscreen, but there is a physical control panel there in the center. The Cosmos and its siblings will use the new Lucid AI experience platform, which, alas, failed in its live demonstration. Lucid claims that it is agentic, personalized, seamless, and can be used with any large language model. The Cosmos's new electronic architecture has 40% fewer wiring harnesses versus the competition and 60% less wiring harness cost versus the Gravity, which, by the way, was already pretty competitive. Now, I mentioned siblings, so there will be 3. The second variant will be badged the Earth. Lucid says it shares 95% of the parts and investment. So it looks like it might be, if you see the thing on the left is the urban on-road and on the right is the suburban off-road. So the Lucid Earth might be kind of an all-road version of the Cosmos. Don't know for sure yet. Profile certainly looks very similar. The interim CEO assures us the vehicles will look, quote, materially different. The final entry on the right does not have a name yet. It looks to be a little slightly boxier and has a more upright profile. And consistent with what we heard from Lucid at CES, will likely have more unique parts and thus an even more unique look. Lucid's market positioning chart plots it as a more functional than sporty vehicle, more like a Rivian R2 or a Ford Bronco Sport. These numbers all look really good, but there's still plenty of data to be filled in. We do know that Lucid replaced their software leadership team to address multiple issues with current production vehicles, so that bodes well for the Cosmos, again, expected to launch at the end of the year. But the proof, of course, is in the product. We'll likely see the full reveal of the Cosmos at least this summer, maybe the Earth as well. And then, of course, it's a matter of getting them out there on the road to kind of boost up the volume and the cash flow for the company. And in the spirit of Steve Jobs and his one more thing that he always did at his Apple events, Lucid did spring a surprise on everyone, which was a new robotaxi based on the new mid-size platform, sharing components with both the Cosmos and the Earth. Like the Vern from Mate Rimac and the Tesla Cybercab, it is a 2-seater with a lot of luggage space, a full-width display, no steering wheel, and no pedals. Uber is already buying 20,000 Gravities to use as robotaxis. But that's a premium vehicle. So this could give them an entry-level model as well. It could reach efficiencies of anywhere from 5.5 to 6 miles per kilowatt hour, which is much better at the moment than any EV currently on the road. Now, Lucid does tell us this is a concept. It is not officially approved, but it's intended to show the capabilities of the platform. With that, we will switch gears to BMW and the ultimate electric driving machine. This is the new i3. Not the i3 that you might recall if you're an auto industry enthusiast, the weird IKEA-esque carbon fiber intensive B-segment hatchback with the optional motorcycle-based range extender. This is an electric version of BMW's 3 Series, and it is the second entry off the Neue class architecture, which debuted with the BMW iX3. And this is significant because the 3 has been BMW's core entry since its introduction over 50 years ago. And it accounts for about 30% of BMW's total sales globally, with over 20 million units sold. The new i3 shows the importance of sedans in an SUV crazy world. BMW provided a noteworthy metric, a 12% increase in WLTP EV range for a vehicle sharing its platform, wheelbase, and powertrain with the iX3 SUV. So just by going from an SUV to a sedan, you get quite a bit more efficiency. As a bonus, wagon enthusiasts can look forward to an i3 Touring, which was teased during the video reveal. If there's anything that disappoints here, and for the record, I am overall a fan of the new model, is that there's nothing really unique here from a feature and technology standpoint that you can't get in a BMW iX3. It's merely a different shape that happens to accelerate faster and grow farther. So that means 400 kilowatt NACS charging, panoramic iDrive, the Heart of Joy electronic brain, and the Symbiotic Drive automated driving. But you know what? That strategy has worked well for Tesla. The Model 3 and the Model Y are equally similar in terms of features and technology. So I really don't think it's going to be that much of a problem here. The interior of the new i3 is very familiar. It should be, because it's pretty much what you can find in an iX3. Overall, this seems to be a pretty good move. The biggest challenge of the i3 is that there is still an internal combustion 3 Series, which is due later this year, and that'll offer gas, diesel, mild hybrid, and plug-in hybrid variants. And it'll share more design cues with the i3. So by this time next year, buyers will have access to a broad portfolio of 3 Series variants with whatever powertrain floats your boat. And if you're a fan of the current i4, which is essentially an electric version of the 4 Series Grand Coupe, act quickly, because BMW's product chief has said that the i3 is essentially the i4's successor. So that vehicle is going to be phased out as the i3 gets phased in. And finally, we'll head over to France for Renault and their next-gen EV. There were a number of Renault products, concepts, and production unveiled at their Future Ready Strategy Day. And the one thing I didn't get a chance to talk about is their next-gen EV platform. Their strategy for the Renault brand includes a 2030 target for Europe that would make the brand about half EV and EREV and one half hybrid. With the dissolution of Renault's Ampere division, which for a while was a separate business unit supporting electrification, Renault's and Ampere's platforms have now been renamed. So the platform that used to be known as CMF-CD for Common Module Family, and later renamed Ampere Medium, is now RGEV Medium, Renault Group Electric Vehicle. And we now have some information on RGEV Medium 2.0, which will replace the current platform that's underneath the Megane and the Scenic. They're targeting a total cost reduction of 40% versus current models, and the ability to price an EV at the same level as a hybrid. Like the current platform, it will support vehicles from B+, so the large end of the small segment, up to the D segment. The EV range is targeted as high as about 466 miles on the European cycle, which translates to a still very impressive 370 miles on the EPA cycle. Plus, the new platform is capable of supporting a range extender, and that would give them a total of about 870 miles on the European cycle. Forward steering is now available on the platform, and cell-to-body construction reduces mass and complexities. The platform is designed to support a variety of both cell chemistries and cell formats, so pouch, cylindrical, whatever, lithium iron phosphate, nickel manganese cobalt, again, whatever floats your boat. It'll use in-house motors for the longer range, higher power models. Those are intended to be 20% cheaper with 25% more power. For the low-end EVs, Renault will be purchasing those motors from external suppliers. This is also an 800-volt architecture. So like Hyundai, they're bringing 800 volts to the masses and features a 7-in-1 power electronics module. We are probably a couple of years away from seeing the first entries off this architecture, but overall it looks very competitive. And with the delays to Volkswagen's SSP, the timing of which is somewhere between 2028 and 2030, this puts Renault and potentially Nissan, who could use this platform, in better shape in terms of competitiveness. And that about wraps things up for this week's with AutoPerspectives. And yes, it was a little like drinking from a fire hose this week. A lot of EV news. If you like what you see in here, please subscribe and share. Visit autoperspectives.net to check out the blog. And I will see you back here in 7 days. So long.